Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuhu. I am Noraida Abo Ibrahim from Bachelor of Secondary Education, major in Mathematics. So today I'm going to continue the discussion of Philippine history, spaces for conflict and controversies. So I have assigned to report the case study number 2 about what happened in the Cavite Mutiny. Why that mutiny, or in Tagalog, paghihimagsik, happened in Cavite. So, the year 1872 is a historic year of two events, the Cavite Mutiny and the martyrdom of the three priests, namely Mariano Gomez, Jose Burgos, and Jacinto Zamora, that later been called or immortalized as Gomburza. These two events, the Cavite Mutiny and martyrdom of the three priests, are very important milestones in the Philippines history and have caused ripples throughout time, which directly influencing the decisive events of the Philippines Revolution toward the end of the century. So in this case study number 2, we zoom in to the events of the Cavite Mutiny, which became a major factor in awakening of nationalism among the Filipinos. So the mutiny events had different sides of story and had a battered of perspectives supported by primary sources. So let's start our investigation with the Spanish account of the Cavite Mutiny. So it was said in the documentation of Spanish historian Jose Montero y Vidal that the event, which was the Cavite Mutiny, was an attempt in overthrowing the Spanish government in the Philippines. So that is according to Jose Montero. People criticized Jose Montero as woefully biased and rabid for a scholar. Why? That's because Jose Montero was a Spanish historian and his bias was only for Spanish. Another account from the official report written by then Governor General Rafael Izquierdo implicated the native clergy who were then in the movement toward secularization of parishes. Okay, so according to the Governor General Rafael Izquierdo, the one who planned the mutiny in Cavite was the Filipino priest. So, as we observe, these two accounts collaborated each other. So, in the account of the Cavite primary source that excerpts from the Montero's mutiny, the abolition of privileges enjoyed by the laborers of the Cavite arsenal of exemption form the tribute was, according to some, the cause of the insurrection. There were, however, other causes. So, according to Montero's account, one of the causes of insurrection or having that mutiny was because of the abolition of privileges of the laborers of the Cavite arsenal. But Montero's also said that there was also other causes of having that insurrection or mutiny in Cavite. The outburst of the American publicists and the criminal policy of the senseless governor whom the revolutionary government sent to govern the Philippines and who put into practice these ideas were the determining circumstances which gave rise among certain Filipinos to the idea of attaining their independence. It was towards this goal that they started to work with the powerful assistance of a certain section of the native clergy, who out of spite towards friars made common cause with the enemies of the mother country. So, according to the documentary of Montero, the other causes of having mutiny in Cavite was because of the outburst of the American publicists and what we called the criminal policy of the senseless governor. Actually, the one that have referred by this was Emilio Aguinaldo, as he was said to be the one who governed in the revolutionary government, a Filipino government that opposing the government of Spaniards. At At various, but especially in the beginning of year 1872, the authorities received anonymous communication with the information that a great uprising would break out against the Spaniards the minute the fleet at Cavite left for the south, and that all would be assassinated, including the friars, but nobody gave importance to these notices. So, just from the beginning of 1872, the Spanish authorities had already heard some information or some rumors that there would be a great mutinies or a great breakout that would happen against the Spaniards. And all the Spaniards, even the Spanish friars, would be killed. However, they did not give importance on these notices. And in the second primary source that excerpts from the official report of Governor Izquierdo on the Cavite Mutiny of 1872, it seems definite that the insurrection was motivated and prepared by native clergy, lawyers, and by those known here as abogados. So, according to the official report of Governor Izquierdo, he directly said that the mutiny or insurrection was prepared by the Filipino priest or Filipino native clergy and Filipino lawyers. The instigator to carry out their criminal project protested against the injustice of the government in not paying the provinces for their tobacco crop, and against the usury that some practice in documents that the finance department gives crop who have to sell them, the injustice of having obliged the workers in the Cavite arsenal to pay tribute starting January 1 and to render personal service from which they were formerly exempted. So here, they abolished the privilege of the Cavite workers. They obliged them to pay taxes starting from January 1. So, in the Spaniards' accounts of the events of 1872, we also have a response to injustice and a Filipino version of the incident. Two other primary accounts exist that seem to counter the accounts of Izquierdo and Montero. First, the account of Dr. Trinidad Hermenegildo Pardo de Tavera, a Filipino scholar and researcher who wrote a Filipino version of the bloody incidents in Cavite. So, there are two accounts of primary source that appeared to refute or to disprove the documentary of the Escudero and Montero. First was the primary source that excerpts from Pardo de Tavera's account of the Cavite Mutiny. This uprising among the soldiers in Cavite was used as a powerful level by the Spanish residents and by the friars. The central government in Madrid had announced its intention to deprive the friars in these islands of power of intervention in matters of civil government and of the direction and management of the university. It was due to these facts and promises that the Filipinos had great hopes of an improvement that their power in the colony would soon be complete a thing of the past. So, it is said here that the government in Madrid was already said its plan to limit the power of Filipino friars in tampering or in interventioning the governance and management of the university, such as the University of Santo Tomas, and San Verda University. That's all because they had seen that through those friars, the Filipino had a great hopes of improvement in the affairs of their country. Our Filipino friars were afraid that their power in the colony of Spaniards would soon be disappeared. According to this account, the incident was merely a mutiny by Filipino soldiers and laborers of the Cavite arsenal to the dissatisfaction arising from the draconian policies of Izquierdo, such as the abolition of privileges and the prohibition of the founding of the School of Art and Trades for Filipino, which the general saw as a smokescreen to creating a political club. So, according to this account, the governance of Izquierdo was so rigorous as he abolished the privileges of Filipino, such as the privilege of having school and trade for Filipino. Therefore, the Filipino press has had insurrect in the governance of Spaniards. However, the central Spanish government introduced an educational decree fusing sectarian schools run by the friars into a school called the Philippine Institution. The decree aimed to improve the standard of education in the Philippines by requiring teaching positions in these schools to be filled by competitive examinations, an improvement welcomed by most Filipinos. So it was said here that even the Spanish government abolished the privilege of Filipinos in having school, they had also later on put a Filipino institute that will govern by the Filipino friars with the aims of having improvement in the standard of education in the Philippines. So, in the primary source that excerpts from the Plauchut's accounts of the Cavite Mutiny, General La Torre created a junta or a group that composed of high officials, including some friars and 6 Spanish officials. At the same time, there was created by the governments in Madrid a committee to investigate the same problems submitted to the Manila Committee. And when the two finished work, it was found that they came to the same conclusions. And here is the summary of the reforms they considered necessary to introduce. First is the changes in tariff or tax rates at customs and the methods of collection. Second is the removal of additional charge payments or surcharges on foreign importations. Third is the reduction of export fees. Fourth is the permission for foreigners to reside in the Philippines, buy real estate, enjoy freedom of worship, and operate commercial transports flying the Spanish flag. And five is the establishment of an advisory council to inform the Minister of Overseas Affairs in Madrid on the necessary reforms to be implemented. And number 6 is the changes in primary and secondary education. 7 is the establishment of an institution of civil administrative in the Philippines, rendering unnecessary the sending home of short-term civil officials every time there is a change of ministry. And number 8 is the study of direct tax system. And the last one is the abolition of the tobacco monopoly, or the abolition of possessing or controlling the trade of tobacco. So those are the summary of the reforms that they had created by the junta or the high officials. But but because of the arrival in Manila of General Izquierdo, put a sudden end to all dreams of reforms. The precautions instituted by the new Governor General were probably expected as a result of the bitter disputes between the Filipino clerics and the friars. Such a policy must really and in a strong desire on the part of the other to repress cruelty. So, because of the arrival of General Izquierdo, all of those reforms was saddened and in regard to schools, it was previously decreed that there should be in Manila a Society of Arts and Trades to be opened in March of 1871. To repress the growth of liberal teachings, General Izquierdo suspended the opening of class the previous to the scheduled inauguration. So, General Izquierdo suspended the opening of the school. The Filipinos had a duty to render service on public roads, construction, and pay taxes every year, but those who were employed at the Cavite were exempted from this obligation from time immemorial. Without preliminaries of any kind, a decree by the governor withdrew from such old employees their retirement privileges and declassified them into the ranks of those who worked on public roads. So, the governor Izquierdo continued to oblige the distribution of taxes, but he exempted the Cavite arsenal. That's all because the friars used the incident as a part of a larger conspiracy to cement their dominance, which had started to show cracks because of the discontent of the Filipinos. They showcased the mutiny as part of a greater conspiracy in the Philippines by Filipinos to overthrow the Spanish government. Unintentionally and more so prophetically, the Cavite Mutiny of 1872 resulted in the martyrdom of Gomburza and paved the way to revolution culminating in 1898. So, the Spanish friars used this event or incident to cement or to have mark in their governance in the Philippines, which had shown vulnerability or weaknesses in our part as a Filipino. And the Spanish friars also used the Cavite Mutiny to showcase that the Filipino really wants to defeat or to overthrow the Spanish government. And because of that, Cavite Mutiny of 1872 resulted in the martyrdom of Gomburza. And it also paved the way to the revolution culminating in 1898, or it became the reason why that another mutiny in 1898 happened. So that's what happened in the Cavite Mutiny. And the third case of this Philippine history spaces for conflict and controversies will also be explained to us by one of our group member, Miss Hagyar Haron. And that's all. I hope you have learned something from my assigned report. Thank you so much for listening.